Welcome to episode 29 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. In this episode's main segment, I'm going to be interviewing one of the co-founders of Scriptapalooza, Mark Andrushko. Scriptapalooza is one of the big screenwriting contests and was established in the late 90s, so it's been around for a while. In the interview, Mark talks about his contest as well as giving out some solid advice for anyone who's writing screenplays and submitting them to contests. So stay tuned for that. I'd like to thank this episode's sponsor, Screencraft. Screencraft is dedicated to helping screenwriters master the craft of screenwriting and succeed in the business of Hollywood. Sign up for free education and inspiration at screencraft.org. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread the word about the podcast. I'd like to thank Constance Nunn, Adam Strange, Babs Patella, Sean Speak, who left me some nice comments over on YouTube for episode 27. Thank you guys very much. I also want to thank Jake Stetler, Chaz Fisher, Nira J. Ryder, Megan Karush, Jody Medland, who all retweeted recent episodes on Twitter. It's a little hard to pick out all the people who are doing retweets, so I apologize if I missed anyone who did a retweet recently. I do look at all these retweets, and I really do appreciate it. I can see my Twitter following growing, and it's all because people are retweeting the episodes. So thanks everyone who has helped spread word about the show on Twitter. It is very much appreciated. A couple of quick notes. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcasts. Also, if you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide, how to write a professional logline and query letter, how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. It really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing one of the co-founders of Scriptapalooza, Mark Andrushko. Here is the interview. Welcome, Mark, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Ashley.
So to start out, I wonder if you could just give us a quick overview of your career in the entertainment industry, kind of how you got started and how Scriptapalooza came to be.
Sure. Well, back in 1998, I moved out to Los Angeles to become an actor, and that was a really difficult, tough road to go through. And I knew a lot of writers, and they always were telling me how they were complaining about screenplay competitions, how they never did anything for the writer, and they just couldn't get their script through the door. They couldn't get an agent, couldn't get a manager. And I looked at them and I said, you know what? Let's change this. Let's create a screenplay competition that does open doors, that does things differently. So we started Scriptapalooza, and here we are, 16 years later. We've produced many films. We've gotten films made. We've hundreds of agents, writers, gotten agents, managers. Just there's so much going on. We work for the writer, and we've proven ourselves all these years that that's what we do.
Okay, so let's start out kind of at the beginning. One of the things I know that you kind of champion as sort of the difference is that the people who are reading the script when you enter Scriptapalooza, they're not just readers, they're actually producers and development people working at companies. So I wonder if okay, and I wonder if we can just start out. I'm curious, like, it's great now that you guys have a reputation, but how did you get that ball started? Did you just cold call producers and say, will you read scripts for our contest?
We did.
It seems like once the ball is rolling, it seems it would be easier. But how did you kind of get that going? And was it difficult? Did people say no?
Well, yeah, that's exactly what we did. We cold called. In the beginning, we started cold calling production companies and said, hey, with the screenplay competition, would you like to read the winners? And, we get hung up on a lot or so forth. But you know what? People caught on. And our first year, I think we had like 20 production companies reading. Now we have over like 140 production companies reading. So that's the difference with Scriptapalooza, that all the reading is done by producers, managers, and agents. When, I don't know, other competitions, what they do, they have readers or something. We think that doesn't work very well. We want to go right to the source where this producer can either, buy your script, can option it, we can get you a meeting, he can hire you. We've been doing that for so long, and it's worked out really, really well, because what happens is, once everybody submits to the competition, there's about 4 months or 5 months of reading time. Now, in those 4 to 5 months of reading time, this producer, if he reads a script that he likes, he would literally call us, and we connect him with the writer instantly. We don't wait until we announce quarters or semis or the winners. So things happen really fast. I mean, even before we announce quarterfinalists in the screenplay competition, we already have, 5 to 10 writers that already gotten meetings and gotten an agent already. That's how fast it happens.
Okay. And what is the arrangement you have with the production companies? I mean, if you're not paying them to read scripts, what do they get out of it? They must know that for the vast majority of the scripts they read, they're not going to be that good. So what's sort of in it for them?
Right. Well, yeah, you are correct. We do not pay them. What their job is, in reality, is to find great writers and get great scripts. So they want to read for us because, they get fresh material. So that's what they get out of it. They find the gems that, they could not find otherwise.
Do they get to select, like when you're working with a production company, does that company say, well, I want certain scripts that meet this criteria, whether it be genre, so they're only reading stuff that potentially they might be interested in?
Yeah, it all matters. Some production companies want certain genres. Others want a mix of everything. So it's entirely up to them. We have certain production companies that only want horror films. So yes, I mean, everybody is different. We deal with so many people, and we just accommodate each producer, as we go along.
Mm-hmm. What is the promise? One fear I would have as a writer, since these production companies are just going through these things and not being paid, what sort of guarantee does the production company make to you as far as how much attention they will spend on one script? Do they promise to read it from front to back? Do they sometimes just read the first 10 pages and then move on?
Well, no, they have to read the whole script because they have to fill out a whole grading sheet for it.
I see.
Yeah, they have to. It's like a one sheet where they have to describe the whole storyline, pacing, everything, dialogue, what they call the characters, everything, and then notes on the bottom. So we get those sheets back from the producer when they're done reading.
Mm-hmm. And then, so how do people sort of move along the Scriptapalooza pipeline as far as becoming a winner? Like the early production companies, they grade it on a scale, and then you grab the winners. And then, is there a second round? Do you send the scripts back out to producers? What's the second round of reading like?
Well, what happens is all the scripts go out to all the production companies. So just let's round it off. Let's say 100 producers get all the scripts. And then they send back to us their recommends, and then the company, Scriptapalooza, we read all the recommends, and then we decide who moves forward to, like, finalists and who eventually wins the whole competition.
Do you have some rough...
The production companies...
Go ahead.
Sorry about it? I said the production companies do the first round, and they do the majority of the biggest reading, and then the Scriptapalooza team rereads everything and moves everything forward.
Okay. And do you have some rough stats? Like, okay, so you get whatever 2,000 submissions. How many of them come back from the production companies with a recommend and make it into that next round?
That's tough to say. I mean, usually a production company would get 40 to 50 scripts, and usually about 5 get sent back. But it all varies. I mean, we've had one year where, HBO sent back 15 that they thought were great. So it's just different with each company.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's talk about some of the winners. You had mentioned some movies have been made from scripts that won in Scriptapalooza. Do you have just a couple of, highlight success stories that you can talk about?
Sure. I mean, we've gotten a lot of scripts moved up through the pipeline of, like, they won the competition or even just they were a finalist, and we got them an agent, and the script was optioned, or they wrote something else through that, and then they sold material. There's so much. If you go to our website, you see on the homepage, we list the 5 or 6 movie posters that are our biggest success stories. There's even a documentary in there, horror pictures. We have a section on our website called Headlines, where we list since 1998 all the success stories that have happened, and there's hundreds and hundreds of them. We do video interviews of the top 13 winners. We try to do as much as we can for our winners. And the thing is this, when we announce the winner, we just don't have a 1 winner and then like 10 runners up. We actually push the top 100 semifinalists and higher for a complete year. So we're a little bit different than other competitions where, other competitions will have a grand prize winner and then 10 runners up or so forth. We actually have that too, but everybody who makes semifinalists and higher, we push their script for a whole year. And the way we do that is we'll have all those production companies that we deal with, that we'll call them and say, hey, you know what are you guys looking for right now? And they're looking for a family comedy. So we'll go through a family comedy through all those 100 scripts, and we'll send it to them. And that's how, that's what we do for a full year. So, we're kind of acting like agents and managers ourselves, but we're not. We're a screenplay competition only, where we work for the writer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, since you're talking, and maybe we can expand on that a little bit, since you're talking with all these production companies, perhaps you can give us some insight into what they're looking for. I mean, are there some trends where you just mentioned like family comedies? Are there some trends that you're seeing that, hey, there seems to be a big market for family comedies, there seems to be a big market for thrillers? Any tips for writers on that end?
It's a tough question because, we deal with so many of them. I mean, if we only dealt with like 3 production companies, it might have been a trend, but we're dealing with, producers are calling us saying they're looking for like a $2 to $3 million budget film, and then, the next production company wants something in the 15 to 20. So that's the hardest question to answer because everybody we talk to, everybody's completely different.
Mm-hmm. And you don't see anything like over the last, you've been doing it now 16 years. You don't see anything and again, I'm not asking for like concrete statistics, but just kind of a gut feeling. Have you seen any changes in the 16 years? Like, what was selling 16 years ago may not be necessarily what production companies are looking for now.
Well, yeah, you have a point a little bit. Here's the thing. What we notice is that as soon as something gets hot, like those vampire movies, we kind of see that going higher where, people are submitting that type of material and actually production companies are looking for that type of material. So it kind of like whatever is out there, whatever, the media is pushing, it seems like the other production companies feel like they should find that same sort of material. Mm-hmm. So, that's kind of like what we see happening a lot.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk about something else like budget ranges. One thing, I got into this business about 16 years ago as well, and I can tell you 16 years ago there was kind of a bigger market for this $2 to like $5 million film, and I feel like as a writer, the producers that I'm talking to, that has really shrunk down, and now these same producers are looking to do movies, less than $1 million. Have you seen any trends like that?
It's not really. The thing is, we don't really get that deep into the budget that much. Mm-hmm. We're basically just dealing with actual scripts. Yes, there's some production companies that will ask us, they're looking for certain types of budgets, but at the end of the day, we are just trying to get the best material to the production company, and then they could actually work out that on their end. Mm-hmm. Because, we're a writing competition. We're not going to get into budgets and, all that stuff. We're just trying to find the best writers we can and get those writers through that door and on the other side and get them jobs.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious too about like when you're talking to these producers, are they typically looking to option and potentially buy a script, or are they oftentimes looking for writers to write an existing property that they may have developed or optioned like on a book or something?
Mostly they're looking to work with the writer to meet them and to get them hired on either a TV show or rewrite a script. Our first place winner right now of this past year just got hired by a major production company to rewrite a major picture. So we're very excited, and that's going to go on in the press in the next, hopefully in a couple months or so. Again, it all matters. I mean, you know, rarely does the script come to us and it's sold instantly, because it kind of goes along different avenues where the writer will get hired by somebody, they'll write something different, you know, and that's how we create the opportunity, you know, but it's different every time.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things, especially newer writers don't realize, that the real money in screenwriting is actually rewriting and developing existing properties, whether they're ideas that are created in these production company houses, as opposed to just selling a spec script. There's not that many people that are out there selling tons of spec scripts. So let's see here. Are there any, this is just something I always like to ask guys who run the contest, are there any scripts that you know of that went through the contest and did not kind of pass through the filters, but did end up getting made and maybe even having some success?
You mean through the competition?
Yeah, I'm just curious if there were ever any scripts submitted that, you know, they were submitted but they got rejected in the first round, but they still went on to actually get made and maybe even have some success.
You know, what has happened here is that we've had numerous scripts that have gone through the competition, had only made maybe quarters and semis, and got optioned and never went further. That happens actually pretty often, where the writer will only make a semifinalist level and not go forward in the competition, but yet we got him an agent because of his material, because you know it went through the competition, a production company read it, but you know we read it and we just didn't move it forward. But he's doing very well on his own. So yeah, that has happened before.
Sure. So let's just take a minute and dive into some of the other Scriptapalooza services. So there's the film competition. You also, correct me if I'm wrong, have a TV competition, and then you also have a coverage service. Maybe you can just tell us, you know, give us a minute or two on each one of those different services.
Sure. So the Screenplay competition is one time a year only. We start accepting October 1st, and our final deadline is around April 15th of every year. So that's one time a year only. Then our TV competition, we have twice a year. It's every 6 months, and you can just check the website on the dates and those. And we are actually accepting right now for the TV competition, and that deadline is like November 15th or something like that. And then we also have a Screenplay coverage service, which is, you know, really, really a great thing for a writer. You know, they wrote their script, and they need a second eyes on it. I mean, coverage is where our analysts will take the script page by page and give you a breakdown of what works, what does not work. You get a log line back, a synopsis on the whole script, and 4 to 5 pages of notes on the script. So a lot of writers are using that because they're trying to, and the analysts that we use are all from the top agencies in Los Angeles. So, they're getting a set of eyes on this script where they're going to get their opinions of what really happens if they send their script to a production company in LA. So those are our three divisions.
Perfect. So is there any just maybe general tips you have for people who are thinking of entering Scriptapalooza, or really even entering any contest? Just some general tips, maybe some common problems that you see.
Problems, just try to send your best work in. Don't rush it. We'll be here in the next 2-3 years. Obviously have your screenplay professionally formatted, no typos. Just make sure the script looks like a professional script. Just those are the biggest things where people think they have to just send in their first draft. They don't have to do that. That's the thing. But for me personally, what I would like to mention is, when entering any competition, just do your homework. Make sure they've been around for a long time. Make sure they're associated with good production companies. What other people think of the competition. We've been around since 1998, so we have we know what we're doing. The biggest thing for us, and the biggest difference for us, is that all our reading is done by production companies. And I think that's the most important thing because, this person that's reading a script can change your life or give you a career if it's good material. So I think just, do your due diligence and, make sure that any competition you enter, they have a good background.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I see quite often, and I would include something like The Blacklist in this as well, is it seems like these sort of dramas earn high marks in contests and on the blacklist, but that's not really a genre that gets made very often. And I last week, in fact, I saw a contest sent out like their winners, and it was like 8 scripts that were their finalists, and they had log lines, and literally all 8 of them were dramas. And I just was thinking, gee, these movies all sound like they're good, these scripts all sound like they're good scripts, but I can't see any of them actually getting made. At Scriptapalooza, have you seen any trends like that where, certain genres maybe are favored versus other types of scripts? I mean, the broad comedies maybe are not, critical darlings, but they have a place in the marketplace. But dramas seem to kind of just garner more critical acclaim.
I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking back, like a couple years back of all our top winners, and dramedies are big, comedies are big with us. Suspense, thriller. I mean, there isn't one genre that really, is the same every year. Because you got to remember, we base it on the writing. We don't base it on anything else. Mm-hmm. That's how we judge. We don't judge on budget. We don't judge where you're from. We don't care if you're a male. We basically are judging the competition on the writing only. If you have an agent already, we don't care. We don't want to know. So. No, I mean, it's a tough question.
Yeah. No. I'm just curious, just to get your reaction. That's certainly a fair answer. So let's just kind of wrap things up. Is there anything that you wish we had talked about that maybe we didn't, that you wanted to say?
No, I mean, I just mentioned, just for writers out there, I know it's tough, entering a ton of competitions every year, and it seems like more competitions are raising their entry fees every year, and it's horrible how, we're seeing other competitions charging $80, $90 to enter. I mean, writers can't afford that, they can't be entering 10 competitions on that type of entry fee. We start out at like $40, $45, and we try to keep it as cheap as possible. Mm-hmm. And, just, be careful, talking to all the writers out there, just be careful, if you're going to enter the top 3 or 4 or 5 competitions that, everybody says are the best. And just go with that.
Yeah. So what's the best way for people to kind of keep up with what you're doing and potentially even contact you?
Well, obviously our website is updated all the time, which is Scriptapalooza.com. But
I'll link to that. Yeah, I'll link to that in the show notes if anybody is listening to this and is not at a computer. I'll put the link to Scriptapalooza in the show notes.
Yeah, our Facebook page is very active. We always put on writing tips, and we have conversations with the writers. We're always posting once a day. So our Facebook page is probably the best. So we always list all the production companies that are coming on board, the new ones. We always list headlines of writers, which are getting options or meetings. It's all on our Facebook page. It's the easiest way to see everything.
Perfect. I'll definitely link to that as well. So, Mark, thank you for coming on the show. It's been very informative. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk with me.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. Thank you.
Just a quick plug for my email and fax blast query service. Just in the last year, I've optioned 4 scripts, sold 1 script, and got 1 paid writing assignment. All of this came from using my own email and fax blast service. Here's how it works. First, you join SYS Select. Then you post your logline and query letter in the SYS Select forum. I will personally review your logline and query letter and help you make them as good as they can be. Then you purchase the blast, and I send it out for you. The emails are sent as if they're from your email address, so all replies go directly back to you. You can exclude companies if there are specific companies you don't want to send to. To learn more, check out www.sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Once again, I want to thank Screencraft for sponsoring this episode. They're currently accepting submissions for their comedy screenplay contest. They have a great lineup of judges, some of the best comedy producers in the business. The deadline for entry is August 1st. Check out screencraft.org if you have a comedy screenplay you'd like to enter. If you're listening to this after August 1st deadline, don't worry. They run different contests all the time, and we'll be doing another comedy contest next year. So do check out the site for the latest contests that they're running. In this week's Writing Words section, I want to talk a bit more about screenwriting contests in general. I've talked about contests a few times in my blog and on this podcast. I myself have never had any success with contests. I was able to option and sell something pretty early on in my career, so I think I probably only entered 3 or 4 contests. But I do think they can be a great way to get some feedback and potentially gain some exposure. Obviously, winning or placing highly in the contest can potentially get you in touch with industry professionals, so that's definitely valuable. But just getting some recognition in a well-regarded contest can give you something exciting to write about in your query letter when you're pitching your screenplays. There's this attitude that I see quite frequently with screenwriters where they think that this service is a scam or that contest is a scam. I get these sorts of emails all the time asking, is this a scam or is that a scam? I've now talked with the founders of many of these organizations, and they all tell me pretty much the same thing. They know that the best way for them to grow their businesses and to be more successful is by helping screenwriters be successful. They know that if some of the screenwriters that go through their organizations go on to become huge successes, that's going to be the best form of advertising for them, and that's going to grow their business. These fairly well-known organizations like Inktip or Screencraft or Blue Cat or Scriptapalooza or The Blacklist or Spec Scout, in this day and age, if they were scams, they wouldn't be able to survive considering how fast word spreads on the internet. Now, I do want to take a minute and talk about some real scams that screenwriters face, and that's the shadowy producer. These are folks who might have an IMDb credit or 2, but they're full-on con artists. What they do is tell you that they love your screenplay, and then they'll usually suggest one of 2 things, either that you need to pay them some upfront capital or seed money to get the film going. I've heard from screenwriters that this seed money can be from anywhere from a few $1,000s all the way up to $50,000. Or the other scam is they'll tell you your script is great, but it needs a bit of work, and you need to hire their friend who's a screenwriter and pay him $5,000 to do a polish on the script. I actually encountered this last one when I first started out in the industry, and this was before IMDb or really any useful internet, so it was much harder to gauge what was going on. Luckily, I didn't fall for it, but mainly I didn't fall for it because I didn't have the $5,000. These are really scams, and these are things that I've heard about quite often, so definitely watch out for those. As far as these big organizations go, I've never run into a big organization that I consider to be a scam. I mean, if you know of any, please do email me. I'll certainly check them out. And again, I want to point out, not every contest or website is going to work for you. I mean, I myself use Inktip and The Blacklist and Spec Scout, and I entered a bunch of contests, and none of those things have worked for me. But does that mean they're scams or you shouldn't try them? Absolutely not. You should be trying everything within your power to get your scripts out there. Find what works for you and then push hard in that direction. For me, my email and fax blast seems to be the best thing, and I'm not exactly sure why, but for whatever reason, that works best for me. But I'm still pushing on these other things just to see if I can get some heat through The Blacklist or through Inktip. There is a cost to these services, and I am sensitive to that. So that's a potential issue, and that's totally fine. If money is tight, these services might not be a good fit for you at this stage of your life. I do want to quickly point out that Screencraft is a sponsor of this podcast, and I myself offer an email and fax blast service. So I guess you can take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. I have gotten to know John Rose, who's the founder of Screencraft, over the last few months. I interviewed him on episode 19, so check that out if you want to learn more about that. And I can tell you, he spends a lot of his time trying to figure out how he can help the winners of his contest get an agent, get meetings with producers. I mean, it's just, he really understands that that's going to be the best way for his business to succeed, is by helping screenwriters to succeed. It really is a win-win for the screenwriters and the contests that they enter. Anyway, that's the show. Thanks for listening.